Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stanley Straughter, and I'm on the board of the Doom Day. I want to thank all of you for coming, and we are celebrating the 43rd anniversary of a Doom Day. And this is one of the programs of many we've hosted this week. Yesterday, the ambassadors and diplomats got a chance to meet the mayor of Philadelphia, the Honorable Jim Kenney. We had a chance to introduce them in City Council, and with the Honorable Senator Cherie Street, we went to Harrisburg to meet the Secretary of Agriculture, the milk industry, and many, many other people. Today, this morning, thanks to the Honorable Kristen Dunbar, the Deputy Treasurer of the City of Philadelphia, and his team, we had a fantastic forum making long-term finance work for Africa. Him and Amir and Dr. Tony Luck and others were able to talk about financing available for Africa and what institutional investors and others are doing in the United States to look at Africa as a point of destination. So thank you, Kristen and Amir, for helping us with that. I think we had some very stimulating discussions that helped us to move what investing from U.S. pension funds and look like and what they're already doing. This is not something we're thinking about doing. They're already doing it. They have over $1 trillion that they're moving to invest. So we'll get you some more information of that. But that forum was for our African diplomats and others, because I usually bring them and they come and talk to us, but we never talk back to them, and nothing happens. So this was a beginning point of that. I want to thank Kristen and his team for putting that together for us. Then we had a working lunch at the Philadelphia Regional Port Authority today to meet them to discuss not only cocoa beans, but all the other things that are going on at the port that could hopefully be available for the Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, as well as Liberia. It's not an accident that we invited these four countries to be with us. These four countries together produce 80% of the world's cocoa beans. And I think you know that Philadelphia, we have the largest facility of storage of cocoa beans in the entire United States of America. I'm proud to say that. But we go from here with major chocolate manufacturing companies from Philadelphia to as far as Hershey. And so we're a major consumer of those cocoa beans, and they create jobs on our port and in our city throughout. So this is a major opportunity for us to work together to enhance the trade. In addition, for Cote d'Ivoire, you may know that the current president of Cote d'Ivoire went to Drexel and Penn. George Stakas from Drexel just reminded us, and we've been working to try to get the current president here, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that. Of course, Ghana, what can I say? The first Democratic elected president of Ghana went to Lincoln University and the University of Pennsylvania, and we have so many other things going on. And we have the great Dr. Erieka Bennett from Ghana, the Diaspora Africa Forum that you'll be hearing from later, and Dr. Sandy Williams will be able to talk more about what we're doing with DAF. And then, of course, Liberia. With Liberia, we have the largest population of Liberians in the entire United States. They're here in Pennsylvania. We have about 60,000 of them here. It used to be Minnesota for some reason, but Philadelphia has beat them out altogether. So I wanted to let you know that we are doing many, many things with Liberia, as well as the opportunity to increase trade and the cultural and economic stuff. And then with Cameroon, we also are the Douala, Cameroon, the commercial capital, is the only African sister city that Philadelphia has. And we've just celebrated 30 years of that sister city with the city of Philadelphia last year, and we're moving to do more business and trade with Cameroon. So we're looking to continue to enhance this relationship and make it go. I wanted to just give you that little background, and as I was doing that, I'm going to ask her to come speak later, but I want to introduce you to Oshunbumi Fernandez West, the president of Odunde. Please stand up and say hello to everybody. Also, you're going to hear from him in a moment, but I just want to recognize the Honorable Senator Cherie Street, who organized dynamic program for us. Let me move on. I'll stop talking. Let me move on. And the first attachment I have is to introduce to you the host in terms of the city, the Honorable Hal T. Epps, the Director of Commerce of the City of Philadelphia. Hal, please.
Wow, good. What is it? Good afternoon. Welcome to Philadelphia, and it is a pleasure to have all of you here. Whenever Stan Straughter is involved with something to do with Africa, I know it's going to be comprehensive, complete, and thorough. So, Stan, we want to thank you on behalf of the city for all that you do. And I want to start by welcoming the members of the various African delegations to Philadelphia. I do hope that your time in our city is great and you get a chance to enjoy all that we have to offer. And I am Commerce Director, so I am obligated to say to you, and I need you to spend a lot of money while you're here. Your presence is a testament to the opportunity Philadelphia has to develop its partnerships and presence across the globe. And trust me when I tell you that Stan is tenacious about ensuring that we figure this out and we continue to make progress. So each of the nations offers our city opportunity for collaboration and our businesses the chance to reach untapped markets. And some of you have heard me speak before. I've done my DNA test, and probably like many of you, I find out what I did not know, that my maternal blood is of Ghana descent. And probably you would probably figure out that my paternal blood comes, which surprised me, but really when I think about it, not a surprise. It comes out of Europe. It comes from Spain. Well, if you think about what our history says, that would be normal, right? So that is what I learned, and I forget the lady's name, but yeah. So let me put a plug in. Yeah. Stand up, stand up. If you have not, yeah, that's right. If you have not had your DNA test done, this lady runs the organization that can get that done, and trust me, she will sign you up right here on the spot. But we have to support one another. That's just one example of how we can not only support, but also learn. So, I've got to introduce as Director of Commerce, and I lead a team that's responsible for serving all business, and I want to stress all business of all sizes for all of Philadelphia. And it's a pleasure to be in this job for 2.5 years after serving in the private sector here in Philadelphia for 10 years and in 5 other states for a very, very long time. Within our department, there are a small but mighty team focused on international business development. Some of them are in the room, and if you are part of the Commerce Department, please stand up and let me introduce you. So that's Yvonne Boy, who is from Ghana. Harold Brooks, who is part of our city district group, is that right? I never get titles right. And Pierre is new to commerce, and he is from France. Is that right? Yes. So, again, they represent part of a very mighty group that helps ensure that this city is growing. And one of the things we are proud of is that, and many Philadelphians may not know this, but right now, for the last 2 years, Philadelphia's pace of growth is faster than the Big Apple. Yeah, we are growing right now faster than New York City and faster than the national average. And for you Philadelphians, I'm not, but I love this city. We are now have the best economy this city has had in 35 years. So, but 2 years does not make a trend. We got to keep it up, and the work that we can do with you can help facilitate that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, a woman by the name of Lauren Swartz leads our international business development opportunities. Some of you know her, but I would say that as we continue to figure out ways to make this work, we will continue to work on a day-to-day basis to create the partnerships that will help our businesses and help make sure that we've got economic engines going in both directions to Ghana, to Africa, and of course back to the United States. A couple of things that I was informed of before I sit down, and that is we have the largest Liberian population in the United States. Stan has already said to you that one of our sister cities is Douala. We've had that since 1986. And one of the things that I want to do as Commerce Director is figure out how to take our sister city relationships from a event to business. And we are going to try to take those relationships that have been in place and figure out how to do business together. And that's one of the things we're focused on. Stan talked about part of Southwest Philadelphia wants to rebrand itself as Africa Town. I was just there on one of my neighborhood tours. I've done 45 of those in 2.5 years, and I continue to learn, and we continue to help facilitate whatever the community wants to facilitate its business group. Our job in commerce is to help them create the plan that is in their image, not in our image, but in their image. And so we're going to work with them to make that happen. You talked about the visit to the Philiport. Well, I was out in Harrisburg not too long ago, Senator Street, conveying, and you were part of the visit here, conveying to the rest of Harrisburg, the rest of Pennsylvania, through Harrisburg, the power of Southeast Pennsylvania. And one of the things we showed them was the power of the cocoa bean. And not only did they come into our port, but it helped to fuel a production and employment pipeline across the state. Not just Pennsylvania, not just Philadelphia, but across the state. And so that's the power of port. We want to figure out ways to have more products from Africa and from us leave here and go back to Africa using our port. So this Stan's talked about it. This administration, and so I'm politicking a little bit, is very committed to our neighborhoods, and that is primarily where the people from African descent are living. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to facilitate their growth. And in 2017, we have worked on projects and hosted groups from Cameroon, Namibia, Ghana, Angola, Djibouti, Egypt, and Uganda, and more to come. So, we are constantly exploring opportunities to do more business in Africa, and we look forward to further engagement. We've already had some conversations to do that today. So I want to thank you for being here. I want you to enjoy your weekend, and with the New Day Festival being the backdrop, I know you will leave here with joy on your face, and I just want you to leave here with no money in your pockets. So enjoy your time, and we look forward to engaging with you this evening and many more times to come in the future. Again, welcome to Philadelphia.
Could you please, just for me, give him another big hand, please? As I said earlier, this administration has been very, very friendly and supportive of our Africa and Caribbean immigrant agenda, and I want to thank you publicly for it. I won't even tell you how much money Yvonne has given to the Africans to help us do Africa Town. We want to thank her and Carol and your whole team for working with us and supporting the concept and getting it done. So we'll keep you guys informed of how to develop. Next, some of you have already met him earlier, and as I said, he organized our trip to Harrisburg and participated in our long-term financing program for Africa this morning. The Honorable Sharif Street. Please bring some greetings, Sharif.
Thanks. How's everybody doing? Now, for many of you, this is probably the second or third time I've greeted you since you've been here, but I want to, once again, in the way of protocol, thank the ambassadors for being here, and thank all of our guests. And for everyone from the city who worked so hard to make this event possible and this visit possible, I want to thank you as well. We truly do appreciate the work that you're doing. To Boomi and everyone at Dunday 365, we appreciate the continuous effort that you make to enrich us both culturally and economically. Stan, thank you for your hard work. And of course, although she's not here, the person who has been the driver, the elected official who has been the driver of this effort more than anyone else for, I would probably say now, the better part of my life, Councilwoman Jannie Blackwell deserves some of that. We were pleased to host. I was pleased, and we at the Commonwealth were pleased to host so many of you at the Capitol. And for those who weren't there, let me share a little bit about what happened. We had a portion of the delegation, including the ambassador from Ghana, join us at the Capitol for a discussion about real economic opportunities that could exist between countries in Africa and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We discussed our existing relationship, and we talked about ways we can enhance it. For those who do not know, I feel obligated to explain, and for those who have heard me say this a couple of times, I apologize in advance. But it's important that folks understand the integral relationship between the economy of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and our West African brothers and sisters and Africa as a whole. Through the Port of Philadelphia, we bring in roughly $4 billion a year of cocoa beans. We bring in a lot of other products as well. I focus on the cocoa beans because it serves as a metaphor for a lot of other things, and it's a direct correlation to the economy of Pennsylvania. So those cocoa beans come in through the Port of Philadelphia, and then they're trucked primarily into central Pennsylvania, where Hershey's, Mars, and I'm told at least a dozen other chocolate manufacturers make chocolate. Now, Pennsylvania is the second largest region in the world for manufacturing milk chocolate. And we have one of the largest dairy. We have some of the most numerous dairy farms of any state in the country. So that would make sense. Just one challenge to that: we don't grow cocoa beans. A whole lot of milk, no cocoa beans. 80% of the world's cocoa beans come from Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And that is where, in fact, most of our cocoa beans come, although a small portion come from Latin America. Those cocoa beans, candies, and added value products are the fastest growing and the most sustainable part of the dairy economy. And all those dairy farms, many of them would be in real trouble if we didn't make Hershey's bars, Mars, and chocolate. And without the cocoa beans, it would not be possible. We'd still have milk, but we wouldn't have the chocolate. So I've been explaining to my colleagues, some of whom are rural, and many of whom do not share my West African heritage, that the importance of Philadelphia and West Africa to their economy. And it is no great secret that the dairy industry is incredibly important, and agriculture is Pennsylvania's largest industry. But without our relationship with West African countries, and without the Port of Philadelphia as a conduit for receiving those goods, that wouldn't be possible. What was pointed out to me by our African visitors was those ships should not be going back empty. We send them, they send over lots of cocoa beans, and we pay for the cocoa beans, but we don't send back resources. And there was a suggestion that we should be doing that. And there are a few things. And I think that can be mutually beneficial for both. I mean, there are raw materials that we could send back that could be used in added value products. Our hardwood, as well as corn, which is an ingredient in many manufactured refined agricultural products. But in addition, there are so many other things that the African countries could use. What I would echo our Commerce Director, we have to move beyond. And for those of us who are African Americans, it was always exciting to talk with folks who are from Africa and understand our cultural heritage and our history. And we get people coming over from Europe all the time, and Asia, and finally people who we have common ancestry with coming. But we have to move beyond mere cultural exchange and move towards our full participation in economic exchange and engagement. And moreover, we have to recognize that we are competing not only with other parts of the world, but with other regions within this country. And if Pennsylvania is going to remain a first-tier region, if Philadelphia is going to remain one of the nation's leading cities, we have to recognize that we need full participation in a global market. We need to start expanding and looking at things like our telemedicine. We have a rich and robust medical economy. We manufacture pharmaceuticals. We have some of the greatest hospitals in the world, and surely some of that expertise could benefit our brothers and sisters in Africa, and there would be economic advantage to both for doing it. We have to look at the full gamut of services that we can provide and that we can receive. And we have to, again, we had a panel this morning recognize the fact that the fastest growing economies in the world are now in Africa. And if we're going to look at where we place our venture capital and where sound investments could go, we have to recognize that Africa is one of those regions, if not the premier region, section of the world to do that. It is both moral and it is economically sound policy. And equally important, while in the United States we have this growing isolationism out of some sectors, particularly folks who are not so wise that happen to sit in lofty offices in Washington, we need to recognize that China and most of the Asian countries are recognizing the value and the growth in Africa, and they're investing there. And if the United States is going to be competitive and remain a world leader, and if this region is going to remain one of the world's leading regions, we have to keep pace with the rest of the world and recognize the value of true partnerships with African countries. And so I'm so glad we're having this roundtable. I'm glad that Stan continues to do his work. I'm glad to see that Bumi has continued to do the work and that she has taken up the mantle that her mother started off by helping many of us recognize the value of both cultural and economic relationships with Africa. And with that, I plan to continue to work. The Councilwoman Blackwell and my father started when my father founded as mayor the Commission on African and Caribbean Immigrant Affairs, placed in our Commerce Department dedicated staff to make sure that we worked on our relationship with Africa, and commit to you that I will advocate to the governor and make sure that our Commonwealth does the same, so that not only the city but the state, if we put 1/10 of the effort into attracting and building a relationship with the fastest economic growing region in the world, Africa, that we have put into attracting Amazon from Seattle, we probably could see a pretty impressive return. So I thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to invite, you're going to hear from the chairman of GIC, but Jill, could you come forward, please, and introduce Don? This is Ms. Jill Fortunato. She is executive director of the Global Independence Center and our partner in this event. I've had the honor of being serving on the board of GIC and being a member. Jill, please introduce the chairman.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to be here and to partner with Stan once again and with Bumi. It's really wonderful working with you. I just want to take a moment before we get too far and thank Stan. I mean, he put this all together, and so if we could just give him a round of applause. Thank you, Stan. I think so too. So I just would like to bring Don up. Don Rissmiller is our chairman of the Global Interdependence Center. This is his first year as chairman. He's doing really well, putting up with me and all of our programs here for GIC. We have events here in Philadelphia and around the world, and we invite you to join us. And so I don't want to give too much of Don's message away, but Don, if you wouldn't mind, please come up. Thank you. Thanks again, Stan.
Okay, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Stan. I'm very happy to be back here at the Philadelphia Fed, which is the home base for the Global Interdependence Center. We have a milestone here with the 43rd Odunde Festival, and while there are plenty of things to worry about in the global economy, part of the mission of GIC is to convene a neutral space for dialogue so that it's not meant to advocate as much as to educate. So when you look around and you see turmoil in financial markets or emerging market spreads widening or trade tensions or economic data that's questionable, earnings growth, valuation concerns, will the tax bill work? Will we see cooling data out of Europe matter? What's going on in Italy? These are the type of questions that the Global Interdependence Center would like to address both through its central banking series as well as through programs like this. So the GIC started in 1976, and that was a celebration of American independence at the time. There were a group of individuals here in Philadelphia who thought at this time when America was celebrating its independence, wouldn't it also be interesting to have a group that talks about interdependence? And so they got together with the universities, eventually got together with the Federal Reserve System, and started a group that became what it is today. And I'm very happy to be here to help lead it, and we're looking forward to a very good program. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Don. We have Boomy on the program to bring closing remarks. But Boomy, could you please come up and give the opening remarks? And then, if you're still here, we do it. So I don't want to change it, but come and say hello to everybody, okay? Please give her a hand, Boomy Fernandez. Good work.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oshunbumi Fernandez West. I am the CEO of Odunde. Odunde was created by my mother in 1975. I was strapped to her back at the first Odunde. And so now I'm standing here with a lot of pride. My mother passed in August, but she left me well-trained and well-educated to keep her legacy alive. Thank you to GIC, to Don, to Jill. Thank you so much, Jill. You go the extra mile every time, you and your staff. Thank you to, I call him my Uncle Stan, because we would not be able to do this international component for the Odunde organization without my Uncle Stan and the connects that he has internationally. I think we have brought about 20 to 30 ambassadors from the beautiful continent of Africa here to Philadelphia, and that's all because of Mr. Stan Straughter. So thank you so much, my other board members. Mr. Kenny Gamble plays an intricate part in helping me keep Odunde's legacy alive. Thank you to the Director of Commerce, Mr. Harold Epps. I knew Mr. Harold Epps when he was CEO, also at PRWT, and he helped Odunde too and gave us support. So I thank you so much. So I'm honored, and I just want to let everyone know that Odunde, we're more than just a festival. And it's very important that we talk about the economic impact of Odunde, because most people think it's just, oh, that's just that festival. People come and have a good time, get some good chicken, and watch some African dances and watch the stage. No, this is how some people think. So I'm being very honest. And so we are more than that. So a couple years ago, I hired E-Consultant Solutions. He's Steve Mellon. He's the same company that does the numbers for Drexel and Penn. And so what he came about, he collected data at Odunde in 2015, and the numbers that he found were profound. He said in his own words, Boom, I've never seen such an economic impact in a 10-hour period in my life. So what he found out was that Odunde has a $28 million economic impact at a city level, and over a $30 million economic impact on a state level, supporting over 300-something jobs at a city and a state level, and creating over six figures, over $740,000 in tax revenue for the state, just in that 10-hour period, and over $500,000 in tax revenue for the city of Philadelphia. So you can call Steve Mellon if you have any questions, because he can fact check it. Because some people want to fact check, right? Boom is just saying those numbers out of mind. No, you can call Steve Mellon himself and fact check for me. But again, it's very important that people know about the economic impact about Odunde. It's very important. You know, we cover over 15 city blocks, have over 2 stages of live entertainment, over 100 arts and crafts and food vendors. And my mom said people used to make fun of her and tell her, say, Lois, go ahead with that African stuff. They're not going to let you take over South Street. They're not going to let you walk down that river and put fruit in that river. You're crazy, Lois. So here we are, 43 years later. 43 years later, my mother sacrificed her spiritual and her physical well-being for Odunde. I can contest to that because I took care of my mom since I've been 16 on a full-time basis with 1% help. So I know what my mother sacrificed to make Odunde survive. So it's with a lot of honor that I continue my mother's legacy. I have 3 sons, so hopefully one of them want to take over my legacy, right? But thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who support Odunde. I hope to see you tomorrow where they will rename the 2300 block of South Street after my mom at 11 a.m. And then everything will culminate on Sunday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at 23rd and South Streets. So I hope that you come, no matter what your income bracket is, no matter what your nationality is. Odunde is for everyone. Thank you.
Odunde! Thank you very much, Bumi, and all of you for walking us here to this wonderful building here. Security is tight, so those of you that didn't get in on time, I told you, you got to register. They need, this is a federal building. I can't control it, but I just wanted to say that to you. But thank you again, Jill and Don, for being here. Next, I want to, first of all, recognize a number of our chambers of commerce here. We have the Ivorian Chamber of Commerce, the African Caribbean Business Council here, and the Liberian Chamber here, the Cameroon Chambers here. So we have a number of organizations here that we've organized, so I want to thank you. I didn't say the Ghana Chamber of Commerce because we have reached out. Excuse me, please, could you, we have the royalty from, some of you met Ife from Nigeria. We now have His Imperial Majesty from Ghana here, so please stand up and greet. Thank you very much for visiting. I was informed earlier that he would be here and by Dr. Bennett, and I was just waiting to see, so I didn't announce it, but I'm going to let Dr. Bennett in a moment after we do the keynote to come and explain for His Majesty to speak, okay? The next thing I was attempting to do, unfortunately, Florence Torsten Hart is not here. She's the current president of the U.S. Ghana Chamber of Commerce, and she's not here, so I checked with Florence to see who will introduce His Excellency the Ambassador from the Republic of Ghana, and Mark has agreed to do so. So let me introduce you to the President-elect of the U.S. Ghana Chamber of Commerce in Philadelphia, Mr. Mark Gendall. Please, Mark, come with.
Jesus, get this slide out.
Great, thank you, Stan. So I am Mark Jondo. I'm the incoming president of the U.S. Ghana Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad to be here today. I was here last year, took part in this event, and it's a wonderful event. I give a hand out to Stan and all the people who put this together. I have the pleasure today of introducing the keynote speaker, His Excellency Dr. Bafo Ajay Barwa. But before he comes up, I just want to say a few words about him. He's the 19th ambassador of Ghana to the United States. This is his second ambassadorial appointment after having served as ambassador of Ghana to Japan with concurrent accreditation to Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, and Papua New Guinea from 2001 to 2008. He's very accomplished. He has a connection to the United States. He attained a Master of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and a PhD from Indiana University in 1972. And as a development advisor, the ambassador has provided consultancy and training to many institutions in Ghana, England, and Wales. He has also lectured in various tertiary institutions in Ghana, England, and the USA. And he obviously has he has an ardent commitment of pursuing socioeconomic development in Ghana. With that, I'd like to introduce the ambassador, please, Dr. Bafo Ajay Bawa. Please.
May I say good evening, ladies and gentlemen? Probably it is traditional for me to thank organizers and whatnot, but I do believe that they have all received so many thanks that if I thank them again, they probably might be asking the city to give them more remuneration because of the fact that everybody appreciates them. So I'm not going to do that. I haven't done my DNA. But I have to mention that when I went to graduate school in Wisconsin, there was this rather very nicely carved and very strong black American woman who was the supervisor of the cafeteria. For the 2 years I was there, she never learned my name. Because the first time she saw me, she said I looked like Hank Aaron, so she only called me Hank for 2 years. So if anybody knows Mr. Aaron, could you tell him I would like to meet him? And on top of that, if he hasn't done his DNA, he better do it so that I will know whether he comes from my hometown or not. I'm standing in here for the Minister for Trade in Ghana. He was supposed to be here, Honorable Chemati. He's taller and better looking, and therefore any mistakes that I make cannot be assigned to him. Whatever fault that you note, assign it to me, and I will do the penance for it if there should be one. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know exactly what a keynote speaker is supposed to say at this point in time because, as far as I know, usually keynotes are at the beginning of the business. This one is at the end. And I'm also aware that according to the simplest of English dictionaries, a key is that little piece that you put in a door and you just click it and everything is all right. So I'm taking advantage of that and ensure that whatever contribution I can make this evening can be extremely very short. Besides that, by way of again introducing myself, I would want to recall a certain lady who lived in my neighborhood when I was a boy. She always picked quarrel with other ladies. And if she picks it with you, she prefers having the quarrel in the street so that everybody would know what it is that she is saying about you. But before she starts talking about you, she lists out everything about her that you may consider negative. So by the time she's through, you wouldn't have anything to say at all because she's already said it. So I'm trying to get you to appreciate the fact that I probably am going to make quite a number of mistakes, but you can't say too much about that because I had already notified you that I'm going to make mistakes. I want to take advantage to do what any ambassador probably will be expected to do. That is, advise those of you who have not been to Ghana to go to Ghana, visit Ghana, and enjoy Ghana. If for nothing at all, for the little map that we have here, that straight line is the Greenwich Meridian, and the one down there is the equator. Where the two intersect is what the geographers would accept is the center of the earth. And you can tell from the diagram that from that point, in whatever direction you move, the first landmass is Ghana. So you may have to agree that when the Creator was doing his business, he was standing on Ghanaian soil. And therefore, if you haven't been, please do go. Especially for those of you who spend a lot of time looking for the Lord. Because it is possible that whilst you are there, you might bump into him and give him whatever request that you would want to give. And I'm quite sure as long as you are in Ghana, considering the fact that in that small country there is everything and anything that the good Lord put on this earth to help any community develop, obviously your request will be granted. Ours were granted. I don't see why yours cannot. With that said, I can tell you, or I can confess to you, that I'm usually not a nervous person. But this afternoon I am. I am because over the 2 days that I've been here, I've got to learn so much about my own country, about our relationship with Philadelphia and Pennsylvania generally. And also I've gotten to appreciate that in this state and in this city, there is a certain trove of talent, a certain package of capability, a certain mass of goodwill that we all have to try and tap into. And that probably is what I'm going to be asking all of us to do. Normally, I probably would have written a speech, but as I told you, because I'm nervous, I'm taking a leaf out of a movie I saw some time ago with Samuel Jackson called A Time to Kill, where a man killed two, young white people because they raped his daughter. And when it came down to summarizing the defense position in court, the lawyer just decided that I had written a speech, but I'm not going to read it. So he put out a defense, which he thought that if he was in the jury, he would want to hear if it meant acquitting the person. So I'm not going to read the speech. We are trying in this particular exercise to get some of us, if not all, to recognize that there is a certain kind of relationship between this state and this city and Ghana. And therefore, if for nothing at all, we ought to try to bring back the kinsman relationship that has always been the basis of trade. Trade has always been a function of trust. And if I can explain it to you, during the war, when the Japanese invaded Southeast Asia and therefore the supply of rubber was interrupted, the British used to buy rubber in Ghana. At that time, it was the Gold Coast. And when the British merchants who were there at the time recognized that there was something in it, they colluded with the British authorities so that they rather have to be the agents between the rubber tappers and the purchasers. Somehow, they got themselves into an association called Association of West African Merchants. And it basically was a cartel. So they fixed the price. And the Ashanti tappers recognized that they had to take some kind of action, at least to maintain the income that they used to get from rubber. So what they also did was that the basic Ashanti food is fufu, which is pounded plantain, pounded yam, pounded cocoyam. So it has a certain viscosity, so it can bounce. And since the rubber was sold by weight, the Ashantis decided that they will have a ball of fufu, wrap rubber around it, and then they weigh it for it to be sold. So they improved their income on this. But then when the purchasers took this thing to Britain to be processed, they realized that the rubber content was very small. So they had to question their agents. And they in turn questioned the Ashantis. And the answer was very simple. Nobody actually told us how to package the rubber. And that is how we packaged it. So, the Association of West African Merchants, the acronym is AWAM. So in the Ashanti language, the word awam is in there, and it means somebody who intentionally interferes with the result and the system. So if the referee is playing a bit of what the French will call comme ci, comme ça, that is awam. So we enrich the vocabulary on the basis of the content of trade. So trade is always very important, and it has a lot to do with what I said, a certain kind of trust and a certain kind of belief that the other person will be fair. And that, in a way, is what we are asking this state and this city to do, because we have a certain kind of history which says we ought to be able to support each other. So in this respect, I would want to bring your attention to the fact that we in Ghana, we are open for business. And we are open for business. We are open for business in the context of the fact that there are so many areas that we can engage ourselves in. And in trying to tease out those that are going to be very beneficial for both of us, we probably need to get together and decide on the strategy and on the methodology for engaging in this kind of economic activity. Ordinarily, somebody might argue that this is the kind of thing that you talk to with regard to the central government, because Ghana is a sovereign country and Pennsylvania is part of the sovereign country of the United States. But one would also want to argue that sometimes the best deals are struck when you go to the source. And in this particular exercise, the definition of the source happens to be, in this case, Pennsylvania, and this wonderful town that all of you have always called the city of brotherly love. And I have grown to appreciate it for the 2 days that I've been here. What we are trying to do is to ensure that at least the produce that we have always traded in, we could up it in terms of quantity and quality. And then also we need to examine other areas that we can, cooperate on, other areas that we can do some exchange in. And especially when it comes to cocoa, Ghana would want to, as it were, align herself with Côte d'Ivoire. Because as we have already mentioned, between the two of us, we produce 80% of the world's cocoa. And recognizing the fact that Ghana cocoa has always been considered premium, and therefore it carries a little higher price on the world market. The tragedy of it all is that if somebody was serving refreshment here at the moment, we probably will be serving tea and coffee and then be talking about cocoa. We have to try and change that, and therefore, if it's worth anything at all, I would want to take the opportunity to ask those officials who are here that please, even if you wouldn't serve cocoa every day, when it has to do with the Ghanaian delegation, try and serve cocoa. But then you can also ask me that if you visited my embassy, I should also serve cocoa. Because if I have to be honest about it, I haven't been doing that. And that is part of the tragedy. I think when we are talking about being open for business, being ready to engage, being available to raise the stakes insofar as our economic relationships are concerned, we are asking that we should make an effort to relax the stringent conditions of trade that we have had so far. World trade, as we have known it over the years, has always appeared like a turnpike. Cheap goods in one direction, expensive manufactured goods in the other direction. What we are asking is that we have to find a way of developing some interstitial relationship between the two, so that it can be, and indeed it must be, beneficial for both sides. So in trying to talk to Philadelphia and trying to talk to Pennsylvania, it is a question of asking for a certain review of the basis of our relationship, especially when it comes to trade. We, over the years, have either been very accommodating or very pliant when it comes to discussing trade and terms of trade, because we have always believed in the contention that, well, whatever we are doing is within the norms of international rules, international protocols, and whatnot. The fact of the matter is, when those rules and protocols were being set, Ghana was not on the table. Ivory Coast was not on the table. No African country was on the table. But we've always, gone with this. And I do believe that it is time that we all ought to accept that we need to see a certain rejigging of the rules to make sure that at least there is a certain semblance of fair play between the producers and the consumers. Mind you, I do know that in an average year, the average Ghanaian child doesn't eat a bar of chocolate. But probably his father or her grandfather or what have you must have been producing cocoa beans since probably he was 16. So it is that imbalance, which if it's not economic, it's even psychological, that we would want all of us to make the attempt to rectify. And in doing so, what at least we hope we are aiming at is improving that relationship between Pennsylvania and Ghana and Ivory Coast. And also, because Liberia also produces a little, and considering the fact that there is this massive Liberian population in the population of, the state, especially on the question of trade and especially on the question of cocoa, we are doing a tripartite, request. And that what we are aiming at is for Pennsylvania to relate to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Liberia insofar as the issue of trade and the matter of fair trading is concerned. we have no intention of, as it were, lopsiding the relationship. Because what we are asking is a certain kind of communion between the two of us to improve on the socioeconomic relationships between your population and ours. And I do believe that in so doing, we even have to put into the equation the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, we are kinsmen. Kwame Nkrumah went to school here. The current president of Cote d'Ivoire went to school here. And there are lots of people who have origins in Philadelphia and in fact in this state who have had associations with Ghana. Maya Angelou is one of them. And in fact, with her on personal basis, when she was in Ghana, she had a son called Guy Johnson. Guy Johnson and I went to buy Kenke one evening at Achimota. We couldn't finish it. So he took custody of it. Sunday morning, Guy Johnson comes, let's go and finish the Kenke. Fine. We went, he brought the Kenke, and there were all these ants on the Kenke. I told Guy Johnson, sorry, we can't eat it. Why not? I said, can't you see the ants? I said, oh, the reason why we don't eat ants is because nobody has found a good way of frying them. He ate the Kenke with the ants. He didn't die. He didn't die. So in some ways, we are related. And the case, the Guy Johnson case basically also says that there ought to be something we could do irrespective of the situation. It has to be a matter of innovation. Because somebody did ask yesterday, that what is it that the ships that bring the cocoa going back to Ghana can carry? Of course, there are lots of things that the ships going back to Ghana could carry. It all depends on what it is that those over here and those over there could recognize as items of exchange. Because somewhere along the line, there are such bright minds on both sides that we can do some good business. And it is, again, that I would want to look at in terms of it constituting the fulcrum of our relationship. We have to find ways of making sure that the kinds of innovations that we have, the advancement that we have made, would also bounce on us for us to be able to even do more than just sending cocoa beans, because we don't want to be sending cocoa beans anymore. Our determination to develop our country without aid hinges on the fact that we can put a lot of value on what we produce at the moment. And therefore, for instance, if I have to make any request at all, I would want to request the chocolate makers, in this state to at least make the effort to set up at least one factory that makes candy, cocoa-based candy in Ghana. And they can export that kind of candy into Pennsylvania and the States. On 2 occasions, I've asked the American State Department that what I want, or what I would want to see, is the American president standing on American soil and talking to American business people and asking them that go and do business with Africa. Because if America is comfortable doing business with China, I don't see why America should find it uncomfortable to do business with Africa. We, in trying to attract investment, have put together a whole package of incentives. We give tax holidays. We make sure that if you have to, find space to put some kind of manufacturing plant, you don't get into a situation where you end up in some kind of litigation. We make sure that whatever profits that you make, as long as they are legitimate, we don't put any strictures on the exploitation of that kind of profit. Our legal system is very fair. It has always been fair. Maybe it's partly because a lot of the people who handle the legal system for quite some time now have been women. Not that I'm saying that women are not very good. Yeah. And in fact, currently, as I'm speaking, the Chief Justice of Ghana is a woman. The Attorney General is a woman. And for the last time that I was in the courts, I noticed that most of the lawyers who were around the courts were young law graduates. Maybe it's part of the system whereby the men have started feeling that they are being elbowed out. And therefore, we may have to look for other professions to get into. But what I'm trying to say is that you cannot, at least on the basis of the arrangements that we have, even be slightly afraid that you might lose your money. And I think I would also want to make a special appeal to those African Americans, Black Americans, I think that's the proper term at the moment, to take a very bold decision to invest in Africa. I believe those people who said that you can take a man out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the man. And one thing that we have to accept is the fact that if we walk down the street, and I'm a grave digger and you are a most senior investment banker, there is a third person who will see both of us in terms of how we look. And since we believe that, the forest trap, what we used to catch, game in the forest, every time it snaps, it goes back. And therefore, I believe very strongly that as long as the back is solid, it is always very easy to march forward. And indeed, for those of you who, as Americans, maybe you've carved your big share of the American dream and whatnot, and I'm not saying that you cannot be American. You have to be American, strong Americans, because we've been here for a long time and you've invested so much in this country. You have to be. But you still, and especially in this age of people determining where they come from on the continent, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that there is very little comfort sitting on somebody else's front porch and watching your house burn. Because after the fire, the owner of the front porch will just ask, and so when are you going home? Knowing very well that you have no home to go to. I'm saying this as an index of the commonality of interest that we have, and how it will translate into economic prosperity for all of us. So please, Philadelphia, we are asking that there are more than wonderful opportunities on the African continent. And I have intentionally stayed away from putting the emphasis on Ghana, only because I know Ghana better. I know, as Ghanaian ambassador, it is my duty to promote Ghana. But for the little information that we have, we say in the language that a good product sells itself. You don't have to advertise so much. So I'm just lumping all of us on the continent together, even though I'm talking about 55 different states with different particulars and whatnot. But the essence of it is that there are opportunities there. And there are resources in this country that can be invested, in Ghana. And even if you take Africa generally, the next move can only be Africa. We are the ones who are going to have the younger population, and they will be growing very fast. And they have voracious appetite. People will buy virtually anything. And therefore, if the intent of any kind of trading situation is to improve profits by raising the volume of sales, go to Africa. And in terms of return on investment, Africa is going to offer better returns than any of the economies that people have, confidence investing in. Don't be afraid, because there isn't anybody around who will tell you that I put $100 into this country in Africa and I lost all of it, irrespective of the political situation. Those who probably might have lost all of it is because they went in being clever by half. What he knows ought to be exchanged for $10, they rather exchange it for $2. And therefore, they go back to the Ashanti robber situation, where people in that case decide that if you came in to jape me, I probably have better methods of japing you. But in a fair situation, in a right situation, in a better constructed situation, there's no way that one could lose on the African continent. So we are going back to the old terms of trade: fair, reciprocal exchange, a certain belief that none of us is trying to, as it were, swing the other person. So in the end, it is the traditional equilibrium price that we are talking about. And I don't mean to say that any society is any holier than the other. But when it comes to being fair, probably fairness was born in Africa and fairness still lives in Africa. And we would want you to seek him and work with him. Africa is in a difficult situation at the moment. Why? Because the way the world has moved, we always have to play catch up. The development of technology, to the extent where these days, if you want to have a face-to-face discussion with somebody, it becomes difficult. The fact that it makes it very difficult even to have the kind of interpersonal relationship that ought to come with trade. And because of that, trade has been reduced to contracts, sometimes very indefensible contracts. And therefore, any agreement or disagreement ends up in a court. That isn't how we would want to pursue trade. We would want to make sure that as we ask for you to engage with us, we make it possible for you to believe that it is the engagement we are talking about, and not a certain opportunity to milk anyone. With that said, and considering that I said I was going to be short, if we came to Philadelphia this time, given the discussions we've had and given the comments that I've made, we probably came to seek a suitor. And we have realized that Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is a suitor. in the sense that we have the history behind us, in the sense that we have commodities that we could exchange, in the sense that for whatever reason, there is a certain line of affection between us. And therefore, there is no reason why we cannot have some kind of courtship, and it should be short because we have all that it takes to make a good marriage. So besides asking that somebody should consider setting up at least one candy factory in Ghana, I'm also proposing, and I hope Stanley, will try and take this under his belt and promote it because he's such a consummate promoter. I'm proposing that, between the two of us, between Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Liberia on one side, and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania on one side, we set up, some kind of an affair consultancy group. And for those who don't know any Ghanaian language, I'm taking the affair out of Africa and Philadelphia. And Afia is a woman who was born on a Friday, and today is a Friday. So please, let us get together and we can start an intensive courtship. We can meet at least quarterly. Devise something. Tease out the areas that we can cooperate and start doing that. Because I do believe that one cannot be asked to save the world, but one can be asked to brighten the corner where one is. And this is one corner that we can brighten. So, to keep my word about being short, I have about 10 more minutes. No, I'm joking. I just want to thank you for the gift of your attention. Thank you.